I was born in Barbados, in the Caribbean. My father was from the country part of the island, and my mom is from like right in town, right in the downtown area of the island of Barbados. It's a very small island, small community, and I have 4 sisters, 1 brother. They're all way older than I am. My youngest sister is 10 years older than I am. So as opposed to growing up with lots of brothers and sisters, or lots of sisters and brothers, it was more like growing up with 4 other moms, you know, and an uncle or whatever. Because yeah, they my siblings really served the role of parents for me, and filled the gap where my parents really didn't do a good job, you know. So I think that's a huge part of my childhood, having these other parents who were really my sisters and brother. So I went to college the first time when I was 19 in Barbados, and I dropped out of college after the first year. I was just like, yeah, this shit is not for me. I really wanted to do music. I had been singing since I was 10 years old. In fact, before that, I had been singing since I was a child in church. And then when I was 10 years old, I sang in a national competition in Barbados. Basically, that was the beginning of a singing career for me, and a music career. So I kind of went to college because it was what my parents expected me to do. That was the only reason I went to college. I went to one of the very privileged high schools in Barbados, not because my family was rich, but because I was bright. I was really bright, and this school only took, you have to take this examination when you're 10 or 11 years old, and it's a really fucked up system. But this school takes all of the best performers in this exam. So this one high school gets all of the brightest children in the island, and then they go on to be the politicians and the lawyers and the doctors of Barbados generally. But that's where I was in that system. I was following that path, so that was why I went to college. But it was not what I wanted to do, so I quit and I went full into my music. And to cut that long story short, I became a very, very successful musician. I owned a recording studio in Barbados. I toured all over the world as a singer, guitarist. I recorded 2 studio albums, produced music videos. I became a celebrity in my country, and enjoyed that for a while. But then it started to get to me. So when I moved to New York, I felt really good not being a celebrity, to be able to walk on the street and not have people bother me and just be a regular person. And that was the beginning of a whole other part of my life. And I have 5 children. So, yeah, and I skipped a big part. I went to college, I dropped out of college, now I have 5 children. So a lot happened in that time. So all when I was doing music and touring and being a celebrity and all of that, I had 3 children. And then I got married and had 2 more children. So I have 5 children. My oldest is 17. He's graduating high school this semester, and he already got accepted to Brooklyn College, which is one of the more prestigious public colleges in New York City. Has a long history, so I'm very proud of him. And basically, at this point in time in my life now, my life is all about trying to be a good example for them, and be a good example for future generations. And yeah, that's basically what motivates me and what sent me back to school, just to do my undergrad, just so I could tell my son, hey, go to college, and not have him tell me, but you quit, you know. Now I can say, go to college. I did it. So I just wanted to finish undergrad, and then I fell in love with school again. I did really well in my undergrad. I got a fellowship to do a PhD straight out of my bachelor's, And that's where I am now. That's why I'm in school now, without having any intentions of being in school at this time of my life at all. I'm in school and I'm loving it. I'm doing well. I'm impacting lives, and I'm still doing my music. As you heard yesterday, music is still a part of all of my research now. Everything I do is centered or based or has some connection to music and the power that music has to change people. And yeah, so that's my background in a huge nutshell. Yeah.
Okay, a two-part question. When did you move to New York, and what were some of the differences immediately that you noticed from being in Barbados and then coming to the States and being in such a busy city like New York?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would have really preferred to maybe have moved to a city in the South when I came to New York, now that I think about it, because this is my second time in the South. I'll answer the question, but let me just start by saying this is my second time in the South, and being in the South really reminds me a lot more of the Caribbean than New York does. So New York was a huge change for me, but I think that if I had moved to somewhere in the South, maybe Mississippi or Texas or Georgia, that I would have felt more at home. So it was a huge change for me. I didn't come here by choice, really. I mean, I could have still opted not to come, but I came here because my wife got a job at the United Nations in New York. And I was like, I guess I'll come. But yeah, so she was my high school sweetheart. We were together in high school, and then she moved away from Barbados, and she actually went to school in Texas. She went to University of Texas, El Paso. So yeah, she went to UTEP. She got a full track scholarship to UTEP. Yeah, she was a top track athlete in the Caribbean and Commonwealth Games, and she was like on track for Olympics, and then injuries happened and stuff. But she's known in Barbados as one of our top athletes, and she's also a college track and field coach here in the U.S. for a number of years. Because after she left UTEP, she went to FIU, and she did her master's and PhD at FIU, Florida International University. And then she was coaching track at FIU. And all of this time we had lost contact and hadn't been talking or corresponding at all. And she had a choice to make between continuing just coaching track at FIU and teaching. She was also teaching classes at FIU and coming back to Barbados. And she chose to come back to Barbados. And that's how we reconnected. We reconnected in the city one day, just passing each other by Actually, I was promoting a show that I was doing, and I was giving out free concert tickets for this show that I was doing in Barbados. And I saw her, and I gave her this free concert ticket, and it was just like, yo, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in years, and all of that. And I gave her this ticket, and she came to the concert. And it was at the concert after my performance that we reconnected, and the rest is history. We got married, and then she got this job offer for this job at the UN, which is a great opportunity, an awesome job. It's exactly what she wanted to do, but it would mean that she would have to leave Barbados. So at first I let her go. First I was like, you go ahead, I'll come after. But I followed her like a month or 2 months after. But I had so much loose ends to tie up in Barbados. I had a business running in Barbados. I had, like I said, I had 3 children already in Barbados, so it was not easy for me to just leave and say, hey, I'm moving to New York. But that was eventually what I did. Sold my car that I loved. Just a nice ride, yo. And I was living, like I said, like a celebrity in Barbados, and it felt good in a way to just give that up and have this opportunity to start over and all of that. And I was in my 30s at that point. And it was a huge change for me. I came to New York, I set up my recording studio, I continued to do my music and stuff, but it was different on 2 levels. First of all, in Barbados I never had to deal with issues of race because the population is 98.9% black or more, and there are a few white Barbadians, but on average, if you see a white person in Barbados, it's a tourist. It's someone who flew in for vacation from US or Europe or whatever. So racism was not an issue that I had to deal with growing up or being in Barbados, but colorism is a huge thing that kids in the Caribbean have to deal with. So we're all black, but then being darker has a stigma attached to it, and then there's this idea that light skin is better, and don't go outside and you're gonna get too dark if you stay out in the sun too much, and all these kind of things that our grandparents and parents would tell us. So it was that kind of thing to deal with, and really not embracing blackness at all. Seeing blackness as something that it just that you can't get rid of, but you don't really want to make it any worse. You don't want to get darker. So for me, coming to New York was an opportunity to embrace what it really means to be black in a place that's not all black. And I haven't really had any explicit experiences with racism in New York where someone has deliberately said or done something to me that hurt me because I was black, but I've seen the institutional racism, and I've seen the kind of implicit, unspoken microaggressions that happen to people every day. That, like I said, I don't have to deal with. People in the Caribbean don't really have to deal with on that kind of racial level, but it happens based on what neighborhood you're from, what school you went to, you're discriminated against, things like that. And we as people find so many reasons to separate ourselves. If it's not race, we're gonna find a way to discriminate against people. So I think that while this is about race, I think that we need to really look at how we see differences in general. For example, people who are overweight are discriminated against in some cases or in some circles. People who have disabilities don't have equal opportunity. And I think that while we're looking at race, we really need to look at, how can we find ways to include people and not exclude people. And like I said earlier, religion is something else that is built to exclude people as well. It's built to have you think a certain way and do things a certain way. And while I acknowledge the power of religion, I also acknowledge the power of religion to be different, to make a change more than what it's currently doing. And that's what I try to share with people whenever I get the opportunity. Just let's find ways to include each other. Let's find ways that we're the same, as opposed to looking at how we're different.
Can you share one of the examples of the microaggressions that you've witnessed in New York?
It's just so prevalent and widespread that it starts to become normal. It starts to become just the way it is. For example, the way someone would look at you when you walk into a store, even if they don't physically follow you. You know what I mean? The way people look at you, just folks' willingness to help or not help in certain situations. Stereotypes around what people expect from you. You do something good or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, that's so nice," and what they're really saying is, "I didn't expect you to do it well," which is not a compliment. You know what I mean? Things like that.
What are some ways, if any, that colorism is combated in Barbados?
Let's see.
That if I can add on to that, if you would also maybe touch on if there are any ways, how might the U.S. be able to adapt some of those ways and use it to combat racism?
I think a lot of it is ignorance, you know. People just don't know any better sometimes, and people just do what they've been taught and what their parents did or whatever. So I think that it's just important to just start different conversations and to start conversations that don't usually happen, you know. For example, I think the church needs to be more accepting of gay and trans people and have more conversations about that, as opposed to seeing it as something that, okay, we're not gonna tell you not to come, but we're not really gonna talk about that either. We're gonna just kind of hope that that goes away, you know what I mean? And I've been the outsider so many times in my life that I really have a special place in my heart for groups and people who are excluded from anything. I often find myself where I'm either the only male in a setting, or the only black male, or the only straight black male in a setting, you know what I mean? And so I know what it feels like to be excluded or to be a minority in many different ways, and I try not to perpetuate that, and I try not to do that to people. So I think education really changed the landscape in Barbados. Like, when colorism exists more in circles that there's less education, as opposed to in circles where people are more educated and more knowledgeable. I think that knowledge of other people and knowledge of other cultures really helps to undo some of the damage that's done by colorism and racism, and it helps us to see that we're all the same. And contact with other people and contact with other cultures, and just giving voice and giving an ear to people who are not usually listened to. So Barbados is always full of tourists, and we come into contact with people from many, many different cultures. So I think what's different too is that in the US, if you don't travel, if you don't get out of the US, it's very possible that you will not meet certain people, especially if you live in the South. It's different in like a metropolitan city like maybe New York or whatever, where you can find people from many different cultures. But there's something about leaving your comfort zone and going out and maybe into someone else's culture where you're the minority or whatever, that I think adds perspective. So in Barbados, for us, it was the fact that unlike some of the other Caribbean islands, we were not that kind of isolated technologically, and in terms of the people, the mass influx of people that would come to Barbados and we would be in contact with, really broadened our perspective, I think, and helped us to overcome various forms of discrimination. But yeah, education is important, just letting people know that there's a different way, and that you don't just have to continue because it's tradition, you don't have to do it the same way, or because your parents did it, you don't have to do it the same way, or even because the Bible says it, it doesn't mean that you have to do it that same way, you know. And I think that we need to have the lives of the people around us and see that as our Bible too, and not just the lives of people who lived thousands of years ago. And I think that there are examples of people who are alive now that we can learn from. There are examples of people who were alive 50 years ago that we can learn from, much in the same way that we can learn from the lives of Peter and the apostles, and you know what I mean? And I think that what religion does, I know we're back on religion, but religion kind of makes things like that, like those kinds of examples, seem like something that's beyond us. Seem like something that we can't aspire to. And You know, people say things like, "Oh, miracles happen today" and all of that. So why aren't they added to some book where future generations can say, "Hey, look at this miracle that happened in 2017," and future generations will still be looking at the miracles that happened when Jesus turned water into wine, as opposed to some of the miracles that are happening today. You know, so maybe this is off topic or whatever, but we need to do things like this, add to our oral history and add to our Bible and learn from our ancestors, our direct ancestors as well, not just the biblical, many ages ago ones.
You mentioned you had 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you tell your kids about race in America and how to handle if they've had any experiences with racism or discrimination, any type of macro or microaggressions that they've told you about?
Yeah, it's weird. I guess I can talk to racism more from their perspective than from mine, because my kids go to schools where they're the minorities, so they go to schools that are predominantly white, and well, the ones that live here. My oldest is here, and my 2 youngest are here. I have my two of my daughters live in Barbados with their mom as well. They visit often. Like every summer, every winter, they're here with me. But the ones that live here, they have a number of issues to deal with. One is that they're the only, or one of the very few children of color in their class and in their school, and also they're children of immigrants, you know, which is a thing as well. They ask me questions like, "Am I a real American?" You know, what is that? My friends say that I'm not a real American because my parents aren't American. So they have those kind of issues to deal with, and I really try to get them to embrace being a person, and so that's where we start. We start like, everyone is a human being, and that's where we all are equal, and that's where everything starts. Where you're born and what color your skin is and all of that is really are things that are beyond your control, but what is in your control is how you see yourself and how you treat other people. And I try to start with just humanity. And also, I try to get them to embrace their Barbadian heritage and see themselves as Barbadians, but also see themselves as Americans and know that that's okay. Because as black people, kind of, you know, we kind of tend to let go of the African part of our heritage. We all have African heritage, right? We're all African. In the same way that an Asian person, even if they're 3 generations in America, they're still an Asian person. You know what I mean? You look at them and they see themselves as still being Chinese, for example. You know, but I look at you like, I either call you African American or American, but you're African, you know? You are African American as well, but you are also African, in the same way that a Chinese person who is 3 generations in is still Chinese, and that's a part of who they are. They're Chinese American, but they're still Chinese, or still Asian, or whatever. So I try to get her to see, especially my daughter, who is 6 years old, and really getting to an age where she's aware of being different and that kind of thing. Like, yeah, you're completely American, but you're also completely a Barbadian, because that's your heritage. You're completely an African. That's who you are, and you know, and that doesn't change if you're born in a different place. If my wife had flown to Czechoslovakia the day before my daughter was born, that would not make her a Czech, would it? You know what I mean? Even if she got Czechoslovakian citizenship, she would still be an African. So that's what I try to teach them. She would still be a Barbadian.
When your youngest approach you with questions like that, like, am I a real American, or my friend said this or said that, and of course you don't have to answer if it makes you uncomfortable, but what initial emotion do you you typically feel or experience when they ask you questions like that? Are you angry? Are you disappointed?
I kind of feel initially a small amount of regret that you were born in the U.S. But just initially, I guess, because it complicates the situation. Obviously, it would be a lot simpler if your parents were born in the same place that you were, you know. But it's just initially, and because I already know their character, and I know like the examples that I give them, it doesn't worry me so much. I see it as an opportunity for them to, like, these kids who say that, they just don't know any better, really. You know, so let me teach you, so maybe you can teach them, and maybe you can make the difference. They don't understand. They're not bad people, or they're not saying it because they're bad people. They just don't understand, and that's, you know, I see it as an opportunity for them to be leaders, and an opportunity for them to really help others within the circles that they're in.
Is there any Barbadian community or neighborhood in New York that you guys are connected with, or that help you uphold that Barbadian heritage?
Definitely. I mean, there's a strong Caribbean community in general. I mean, and all Caribbean people see themselves as, you know, we're Caribbean people. There's something we share. But even before that, just being black makes me a part of a community that is meaningful, you know what I mean? And just, especially now that being aware of your African roots is more and more so a cool thing, and it's a good thing. It's easy for people for people of color, for black people to identify on the African thing, you know, to connect on, yeah, we know we're both coming from the same place. But yeah, there's a Caribbean community, and then there is a Bajan community, Barbadian, Bajan, same thing. Yeah, so there's a Bajan community that's very, very strong. Like when I moved to the block that I live on in Brooklyn, there were already people from Barbados on that block. So you don't have to go far to find people who you can identify with and who understand what you're going through, and that makes a huge, huge difference. So like in my house, we play radio from Barbados, and you can do things like this now with the internet. You know what I mean? I wake up in the morning, I put on a Barbados radio station, so we hear the news in Barbados. They hear people talking with a Barbadian accent. They know what's happening in the community. You know what I mean? So it really removes some of the distance and the separation. Yeah, things like that. Just being involved in the Barbados community. I do performances at the Barbados consulate, for example. If they had a function, they would call me and ask me to do like a Barbados folk song, just me and my guitar or whatever. So just staying connected and making sure that my kids are a part of that as well. I think it's a great opportunity to be born in the US, but to have this whole other heritage along with you know, the importance and greatness of being born in the US. I think it's such an advantage that they have, and it's, being bilingual is a great advantage as well. And even though the language of Barbados is English, we also have like a dialect that we speak in Barbados, and it's almost like another language, even though it's based on English. And I try to, you know, teach them that and make sure that they understand. And I think that, like someone was saying in the session earlier, being able to think in another language or in other words really broadens your perspective as well. Even if it's slang, you know, even if it's slang words or broken English or whatever, it really broadens your perspective if you know another word for this, or another word for this concept, or, you know. So I just try to look at the positives and accentuate the positives as much as I can.
Well, we'll bring this interview to a close. But before we officially end, is there anything to your story that you like to add, that you like to say to anyone who may be coming from another country into the States and maybe in a similar predicament as yourself, or someone just struggling with the injustice of racism or colorism?
I don't know, just be thankful for whatever situation you're in, no matter how hard or difficult or unfair it might seem, you know. Something that I always say is that things could always be worse. It could always be worse, even though it doesn't seem that way. But we have to start with gratitude. We have to start with being thankful for being alive, thankful for the work that our ancestors have done, thankful for having the opportunity to do something different. So let me just say thanks for this opportunity to be able to record this. And if you're watching this 100 years from now, it was really cool being alive in 2018. It's a really important time. I hope we didn't mess up the world too much for you. We're trying this environmental protection thing and trying to do recycling and all of that, and it's not really impacting us now, but I know that it impacted your world, and I hope that we did an okay job trying to start protecting the environment more than we have been doing in like the 60s and 70s and that kind of thing, just dumping things. So yeah, just continue to protect the earth for people who live 100 years after you, and continue recording oral histories like this in whatever newfangled technology you have that you can just and just, you know, but whatever you do, just continue to preserve things like this, and just know that we love you.